We have, it's not a very scientific term, but this is kind of more of their far red purple. Some may call it blurple. You know, there's a lot of those kind of innuendos. And this is more of a white spectrum. But they're both...
I can see the difference in the lights, and I can also see the difference in what's happening with the plants under each light. So here we've even got some pink flowers coming through on this light spectrum. What's happening here?
Well, actually, that's something that is, again, we're research and developing, and this is something that's, it looks great, but that's called light bleaching. So that's not necessarily a good thing. That means that the PAR value, or the photosynthetically active radiation, is too great in that specific area, and how they measure that is called PPFDs. And so they take that U-mole and they take that specific square footage, and then that's what equates to a PPFD. So that particular strain with this particular U-moles does not like it. And so that's also what we're researching here, is a lot of our other rooms are macro cropped, where they have one strain along an entire row that is, 50 feet. These are a potpourri of all of our genetics. We went through one of the, certainly not the largest pheno hunts in the nation, but one of probably the largest in Massachusetts. So we chose to start from seed. And then, what happens there is you're looking at different phenotypical variations of those seeds. So if you plant 1,000 seeds, each one of those is considered a different phenotype. And then basically how that works is their genomic mapping, or their genomic makeup, is represented phenomically. So like an example would be like height, or unconnected, connected earlobes, eyes, and those things are, how a plant, would show that would be its internodal stacking, its calyx development, certainly its terpenes, its total active cannabinoids.
That's really what's making the massive diversity in different cannabis plants.
Absolutely, and that's what makes going through a pheno hunt special, is if you plant several hundred seeds of that, particular pheno or that particular cultivar, you will likely find the best representation of that cultivar. As an example, our Pina Grande, we went through over 500 seeds to find the one that we ultimately went with.
Wow, okay, so there's really a lot of research that goes behind the eventual cultivation of the award-winning flowers that you guys are producing here.
It's going through a pheno hunt is certainly a challenge. You're gonna have your goods with your bads, but it's the love and the passion and just the desire. It's like finding that unicorn. It truly is something unique.
Christmas in here. Oh my goodness. Each plant is probably about 3 foot tall. They still have all of their fan leaves and sugar leaves going on, so they're still growing and still budding.
These are currently in week 5. They have 3 more weeks to go.
And then after that, how do you even approach the task of trimming such a massive amount of plant by hand?
Yeah, so basically it's a matter of kind of taking the various parts of the plant. So you do want to remove the fan leaves, and then the sugar leaves can stay. And then as we do what we call a low and slow, which is again kind of in quality industry standards. So we dry for about 10 to 14 days at 60 degrees, 60% humidity. And what that allows it to do is it allows that chlorophyll to dissipate at a natural rate. Some of the times when you machine trim and you trap that chlorophyll in the plant, it creates that kind of green hay smell, as opposed to allowing those plants' natural flavonoids and ketones and terpenes to really come out. As well as, kind of having that sugar leaf still on the plant, it creates a cocoon effect. And so your trichomes are still intact. And so there's, those are kind of the benefits. But essentially you would harvest the plant from the bottom, hang it upside down, and then the harvest team would take it into the dry room itself. So you'll see throughout our facility, we have a single tier, a double tier, and then this particular triple tier. These are our smallest flowering plants in the entire facility. So with the single tier, obviously, we're able to grow much larger plants, as well as it's kind of a different equation with HID versus LED. So we started with over 98 different strains. We're down to 40 now, and that's where our main line and limited line comes. Is originally our limited line was our pheno hunt. And then as we actually found those phenos that were worth keeping, we transfer them over to our main line.
There's definitely a large full spectrum smell of cannabis in here.
I wanted to know a bit more about the breeding project that eventually produced these award-winning strains that won Bountiful Farms several titles at cups like the Massachusetts Cultivators Cup and the High Times Cannabis Cup.
Back in September, where they basically threw a massive festival and crowned the best, I guess it was just Massachusetts, right? Just Massachusetts dispensary weed.
Correct.
And you guys won throughout most of their categories, you guys were winners, right?
We were. We're incredibly humbled and honored. The Cultivators Cup was an amazing experience. Coming from Colorado, I certainly am not new to cups, but that one was so unique in so many ways. One, it was a blind taste test, and so it was really awesome to kind of get away from some of the marketing and just allow the cannabis plant to speak for itself. And so people were really just focused on what that plant, really was providing and what they liked about it. And we were able to win. We had 2 entries, the Pina Grande and our secret formula, and we won best taste and best overall with the Pina Grande, and we won best cure with our secret formula. And so yes, it was a wonderful experience.
That's awesome. Are we going to see any of those in here?
Absolutely. So this, we're going to this room last actually. This is our expansion room. So as I kind of stated earlier, we went through a pheno hunt of roughly 4,000 seeds, over about 95 different genetics, and really kind of tried to check all boxes. I was lucky enough to be a part of a breeding project in Colorado. So some of these strains in which we brought, I don't necessarily want to say are proprietary, but they're not for sale anymore. I did that breeding project in 2016. And that includes Pina Grande, the award-winning, as well as Texas Shoreline, and Colorado Bubba, and a few others. So I think what kind of made some of those unique is we tried to go after different profiles than maybe some of the others. You see a lot of cookies crosses these days. You see a lot of very similar crosses, and as you pheno hunt and as you breed certain strains, you'll realize that certain strains have certain dominant alleles that it almost is like regardless of what you breed it with, it's that plus. And so we, kind of went back to more of an old school strain, and Pina Grande is a pineapple chunk from Barney seeds, and so that's a skunk number 1, which if you delineate every cannabis genetic, it all goes back to skunk number 1. So skunk number 1 is kind of, the godfather, so to speak.
I remember when I was in high school, the only weed that I could buy, everybody would just call skunk.
Yep.
So there it is.
Yeah. So it was a skunk number 1 times cheese, and then we crossed that with a Skywalker OG from Cali Connection, and that's what made Pina Grande.
Beautiful.
Then we moved on to a grow room with slightly more mature plants.
So per CC regulations, every plant is tagged. That's kind of their social security number, and then that tag follows them throughout the harvest. Then basically you create batches from those tags. But to answer your first question, 1,212 plants.
Oh my good God, dude. That's a lot of weed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever done a grow this big before?
I have. I have. Yeah, in Colorado. Yeah, certainly. Not here in Massachusetts. So I've only been here for this company in Massachusetts, and but in Colorado, as a 21-year-old, I ran a 300,000 square foot facility.
Wow, well, what a thing to do at 21 years old. That's crazy.
Yeah, just was right place, right time. And certainly lucky to learn what not to do.
Well, Massachusetts is lucky to have gotten you, because now we've got some of this amazing bud.
Next up, we hit up one of the final growing rooms where plants that are coming to the end of their growing season are getting ready to be flushed with water and then harvested. And the smell was intense.
So here you can see what we kind of call the stacking phase in between day 21 and 42. So this is where the plants themselves really get that girth, and you see that distance, that internodal distance, begin to diminish, and the buds themselves begin to resin and swell.
You can definitely see the difference from the other room where it was mostly leaves, and here it seems to be mostly buds and these long, tall stalks that just reach probably almost 6 foot tall. And the buds are still growing at that point?
Absolutely. Yeah, these plants still have another 3 weeks of feed and then 2 weeks of flush.
It's such a sweet smell in here. It smells like you're in like a rose garden or another garden with flowers. It's just such a fragrant smell in here.
We have a whole bay of pinas over here. I can show you what it looks like growing, and then we just harvested some, so I can kind of show you the full evolution of the Pina Grande. So here we are looking at the Pina Grande. So you can kind of smell the aroma coming off of her. She's very high in pinene, limonene, and she actually has terpinolene as well, which is somewhat unique. A lot of plants are high in myrcene. Terpinolene is kind of a sister of myrcene, but nonetheless somewhat of a different terpene. She's kind of been described as somewhat of a fabuloso, kind of cleaning with a little bit of a OG undertone. We feel like she's the hybridization and kind of the best of both worlds of her mom and her dad. So if you like, you can take your fingers there and give a little smell there.
Oh, it feels really soft. The bud is really springy. And now my fingers smell like perfume. For real, it smells like perfume. That's really... It just makes you happy to smell it. Just the terpenes on the raw bud, I don't know, make me feel uplifted to be in this room.
Oftentimes people don't realize that smoke bud smells drastically different than growing bud. Even people who don't necessarily enjoy the smell of bud that's going through the decarboxylation process, they certainly enjoy the smell of the freshness of live flower.
And then came the drying and curing room, where long stalks of marijuana bursting with flowers were hanging upside down, side by side, drying out, forming long curtains of cannabis.
It smells like a candy store.
So we're looking at 100 lights in here, and the plant itself, again, this is going to be, the variable is the strain itself, but on average it's going to lose 85 to 90% of its weight to what we call water loss. So as that water dissipates, that plant will begin to shrink, and then kind of one of the tricks of the trade is as you feel a slight snap in the stem is when that plant is then ready to then start that curing process.
And how many days or weeks does it usually get to that phase?
Average 2 weeks. And again, some of the smaller bud structures, I guess, similar to your cookies or things of those natures, will take around 10 days. Things like the award-winning Pina Grande, Grande is not a nickname by accident, so she has very large colas, so it takes roughly 14 days.
Let's go over and smell them. Oh my goodness.
So
There's just like curtains of 6 to 10 foot long stalks of marijuana hanging all around us.
So this is the award-winning Pina here.
Wow.
You can kind of see
gorgeous.
in her full, mature, ripened stage.
And she's got these beautiful orange wispy hairs and really crystally buds going on, and nice dark greens, actually some light greens. I love to see a mixture of green color in my bud.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so a lot of that is through the flush process itself. And by flush I mean that you're removing all the residual salts. And then through that you're able to allow some of the recessive chlorophylls to come out, just like fall. So you get your yellows and your anthocyanins, and a lot of those various colors come out through the flushing process itself.
And that's just when you're coming to the end, right before you're about to cut the plant, and you literally flood it with water, right?
Correct. Again, there's various ways to go about the flushing. We chose to go for a longer flushing period as opposed to doing like some growers do, which is a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 of a flush ratio versus a feed ratio. And so we kind of believe in the slower, they call it a deionization, where you're basically stripping those salts.
Do you think that makes for a smoother smoke?
I do. It's certainly one of the harder scalabilities in this particular process is the dry and cure, because to be done right needs to be done slow.
I can't get over the smell. It's like I'm happier than when I'm in a bakery. It's so good. It's really beautiful in here. I could just sit down and sleep, I think.
Thank you. Well, if you want to go check out some fully dried and cured products,
Yeah,
absolutely.
let's do it. You can really see the consistency in this bud. Like every bag of this looks the same. Every cola looks the same. It's all got the same sort of.
So that's the full evolution from flower room 2, in which you saw her in roughly week 4, to the harvested plants in which we just saw, until this is dried, cured, and ready to go out to the public.
This is beautiful. I don't want to breathe on it too much. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. You want to look in there, dude? Smell that. That is like Santa's sack of weed. Oh, that's beautiful.
Use that.
After our tour, Zack and I sat down to talk about what comes next for the growing team behind some of the winningest legal marijuana in the state of Massachusetts.
So you are now not just the Solar Cannabis Cup winner. You've won a couple of different awards with High Times. What did you get just last week?
Just last week we won Best Indica with our